Dr. M.D.D. Pieris, the honored guest speaker today, Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Dean of the Faculty of Management and Commerce, Professor Swarna P.S.Siri, Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Karuna Nayaka, Emeritus Professor of this university, professors, senior lecturers, and lecturers of my faculty, dear parents, and my dear students. This day marks the dawn of your academic program, the beginning of a long road during which you will acquire systematically three important components of learning. You will acquire the knowledge of the human body and the diseases affiliated to it. You will also acquire the clinical skills, which means, in simple terms, the ability to interpret examination findings and the ability to use results of certain tests for decision making. And thirdly, the ability to perform certain procedures by yourselves, which we call procedural skills. At the end, of course, after passing your examinations, you will become a competent doctor who can diagnose and treat diseases. However, these essentials only will not make you a good doctor. A doctor the society out there is eagerly waiting to have. A doctor who earns the confidence and respect of the society by the quality of the work, kindness, compassion, and commitment to the sacred duty of looking after the sick and the needy. The personal and professional development module is a building block for this essential component of training. However, in the rush to acquire the knowledge and skills, there is a tendency by the students to underestimate or sometimes overlook the importance of this aspect of training. In order to lay the foundation to this building block, today you have the privilege to listen to a very eminent person from our society who has kindly consented to deliver this commencement lecture, which is a very first official lecture in your undergraduate curriculum, and he is Dr. M.D.D. Pieris. Sir, at the outset, let me say on behalf of my faculty how honored we feel to have you here, and we are extremely grateful to you for accepting our invitation to speak to our students. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am privileged to introduce to you one of the most respected public servants of Sri Lanka, Dr. Minampitege Dhammasri Dayananda Pieris. Dr. Pieris is indeed a rare person, a distinguished civil servant who had served diverse governments at highest levels, a rare Sri Lankan with a PhD who does not call himself a doctor, a person who is decorated by the state with titles Deshabandhu and Deshamanya, who never uses it. During his youth, he had been a versatile all-rounder, captaining cricket at Thurston College and later playing for St. Joseph's. Having graduated from the University of Peradeniya in 1961 with honours, he soon joined the then coveted Ceylon Civil Service in 1961. During his 37 years of public service, with an unblemished record, he had held many prestigious posts. At a young age of 32, he was appointed the secretary to the Prime Minister Mrs. Sirimao Bandaranayake, a post he held from 1970 to 1977, a unique and also very turbulent period in our country. That was the time when Sri Lanka hosted the first non-aligned conference and also experienced the very first insurrection in the island. During this period, he, on many occasions, shouldered the additional responsibility of the Secretary of Defense. Under subsequent regimes, he had held the post of the Secretary of Food and Cooperatives and the Secretary to the Ministry of Education and Higher Education. Apart from heading the Ministry of Higher Education for a considerable period, he also served in many governing bodies of higher educational institutes. 16 years as a council member of the University of Colombo, a member of the Board of Management of the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine of Sri Lanka, a member of the Board of Postgraduate Institute of Management of University of Jayewardenepura, Postgraduate Institute of Archaeology of the University of Calanian, Arthur C. Clarke Center for Modern Technology of the University of Moratuwa, to name few. Many corporate sector establishments, the list is too long to name, who has also had the privilege to utilize his services. Mr. Pieris is recognized as a dedicated, conscientious civil servant who understood human issues and made decisions on principles, upholding the democratic and human rights and respect for others' views. His firm adherence to good governance, transparency, and integrity has gained him the respect not only of the administrative world but from all sectors of our society. His advice to prime ministers, to ministers, to university councils, and to different educational boards he served is highly appreciated, especially in crisis situations where he was able to make decisions impartially. You may wonder why such a person is asked to speak to you, the young budding doctors. It is only people like him who can tell what the society expects from our young doctors today. By an honest member of our society who has led an exemplary life and understands the pulse of the society to tell what the common man wants from our doctors. We as medical teachers can give you knowledge, skills, and attitudes, but from the beginning, you should know what the patients expect from you, so that you will blossom out from this faculty as a caring, humane doctors, doctors this university can be proud of producing. Dear sir, may I now kindly request you to address our students.
Vice Chancellor of the University of Jayewardenepura, Professor Mohan De Silva, Dean of the Faculty of, I think we call it Medical and Allied Sciences, right? Medical Sciences, other deans of faculties, senior professors, senior lecturers, parents, and undergraduates. First of all, may I say how deeply touched I have been by the very kind introduction made by Professor Mohan De Silva. I know that it came from his heart. I also must say I have been honored and privileged to be invited to deliver this commencement lecture. On a very personal note, I think Professor Mohan De Silva mentioned of a connection I have had with this university, namely at various times being on the board of management of the Postgraduate Institute of Management of this university. But I think very few people know that my connection to this university goes far longer and far deeper. After graduation, my first job was as assistant librarian with Vidyodaya University. When the library was just starting, and there was Mr. Rajapatrana, who was a trained librarian, and I was the then only assistant librarian. And we were at that time Maligakanda premises of the Vidyodaya Perivan. Mr. Kumarage was registrar, and there were people like Dr. Ananda Guruge and others who were building up this university. And during this time, I had to, as a pioneer starting a library, very quickly assimilate the classifications of the Dewey Decimal System in library science and start classifying books. Very quickly, classification of books is not an easy task. You cannot go by the title. Let me give you one example. And also don't forget, a book misclassified and misplaced is a book lost. It may be in the library, but it is lost. Let me give you one example. There is a book called Two Eggs on My Plate. Now, if you look at just the title of that book, you will put that under cookery or culinary science. But that book is about a true story during World War II of a coded message to the British pilots who were going out on bombing missions over Germany. And the code was that those who were going on the mission were discreetly given 2 eggs when they went for breakfast. Others got 1 egg. The bombing pilots, they knew they were on the bombing mission when they had 2 eggs on their plate. What if we have classified a book like that under cookery? So, just to say, so I have that connection. I have had also a deeper connection. That is with the first Vice Chancellor of your university, Venerable Balivittiya Sovatha. He happened to be a very great friend of my father's. And I've had the good fortune to read some of the Sinhala classics under him, under his tutelage, just he and I. And I read the Buddhasarana and the Poojavalya, vast sections with him. He must have been somewhat pleased with me because one day he went inside his kutia or room and came bearing in his hands his 2-volume dictionary, his 2-volume Sinhala dictionary, which he himself wrote. You can imagine his scholarship, the depth of his scholarship. When I say that he had written the Sri Sumangala Sabdakosha by himself, 2 volumes, and he presented me with these 2 volumes, 2 volumes which I still have at home. So, I have to say that coming to Sri Jayewardenepura is not unfamiliar at all to me. Then let me see what I could tell you. Basically what I want you to do is to think. Because now, up to maybe yesterday, you were school children. And we have a separate way of describing school children, separate vocabulary. In school, you had teachers, you had pupils. Today, you have transformed yourself through your abilities, through your own abilities, as undergraduates. Today you are not pupils. Today you are students. And your teachers are professors and lecturers. They also are called teachers because one of the main functions that they have to perform is to teach. But of course there are research and other functions. So, that is the first thing that you have to bear in mind. The responsibility of being an undergraduate. You are no longer a carefree schoolboy or schoolgirl. You are now reached a new level, a new dimension, and you must be conscious of it. This part of what I have to say, I am talking about consciousness and awareness. Because otherwise we all tend to sail through life without noting its significances. I asked the Vice Chancellor what your age group would be. And the Vice Chancellor told me that you would be around 20, 22, 23. During our time, when we got into the only university at that time, University of Ceylon, only one university, with two campuses, Peradeniya and Colombo. Older campus was Colombo. And I was in Peradeniya. And Peradeniya just virtually started, three or 4 years before that. Some of the halls were still being built. And in Peradeniya, when we reached Peradeniya, we were still in our teens. In a way, we were still schoolboys. We got into university at the age of about 18. We had one more year to go to finish the teens, that is 19. By the time we reached 19, we were in our second year. And when we went to the university, still with 12 years of schoolboy carefreeness, suddenly we were, by very senior professors and others, we were called Mr. and Miss, and we were 18. Mind you, at that time the legal age of majority was 21. Now is 18. To us, it was quite a shock. Here you were called by all kinds of names in school, and suddenly, very solemnly, you are called Mr. Pieris or Miss Gunawardena or whatever. It took a little time to realize the significance of that. That's why I'm now talking about significances. And it was important for us to realize that we were at a different threshold. And we also found, unfortunately, in a short lecture, I don't have time to tell you too much. Some things of great interest. But we found that even not only the academic studies, but the marking was totally different to what we could have ever imagined in school. For instance, speaking personally, I think the best thing is to speak personally, because then it becomes more interesting. Some of my tutorials, when they were marked, I used to get C++, sometimes B minus. I still don't understand the difference between C++ and B minus. Must have been a hair's breadth. Mind you, not B minus, B minus. And not C++. But those were early lessons. I think what our professors and lecturers want to tell us is, you have to earn every mark. If there was slightest doubt, you suffered. you had to prove your ability beyond doubt. And then they might have removed one minus. So we learned that. It was a good discipline. So you are also coming to a university with a rigorous academic environment. And it's good for you to know some of these things, that what you may have to go through, others have gone through before. And you will come out better for that challenge. Let me take another point. We talk about education. You have been educated for 12 or 13 years. Primary school, lower secondary, upper secondary. Now we think we are educated. But the question is, are we? You must realize that education is perpetual. Education is not a destination. Education is a journey. You never stop that journey. Only nature will stop that journey for you when you die. That is why all over the world, including the intellectual agencies like UNESCO, now say there's only one important aspect of learning that everybody has to remember, and that is continuous lifelong learning. When it comes to professionals like you would become in due course, it is termed CPD. CPD is continuous professional development. The acronym is CPD, continuous professional development. Decades ago when we went to school, there were no such concepts. And if you got a first degree, well, that was that. These changes have occurred because of the increasing complexity of the world. And education had to meet the challenges of that complexity. So I won't dwell at very great length on this, but just to flag it for you, please don't think, even if you got 3 A's or 4 A's or whatever, that you are educated. All it shows you is that you are intelligent, able, maybe you have good memory, but you are not educated. Am I educated? Not really. We are being educated still. That process doesn't stop. I'm still reading at my age. I'm over 70 years now. And I'm reading and learning every day. Then we come to, you must also understand what education is. It is said that earlier it was stated that you have to acquire 2 things: literacy, numeracy. Literacy is about words, numeracy is about figures, mathematics and so on. But that was long time ago. Today that's not enough. It is not considered enough. Literacy and numeracy is not enough. There is a third strand, operacy, O-P-E-R-A-C-Y, operacy. What is operacy? Operacy is about converting your numerate and skills, other skills, into actual practical functioning. In the ancient Sinhala sayings, you have heard Panditayant Edandeng and Ba. Operacy is about that. You can be a Panditya, but you must be able to go on the Edanda and cross without falling into the street. This concept of operacy has come in because of that very, when you come to think of it, all this is in our ancient wisdom. All this is there. But now we are looking at libraries, books, we are looking at Harvard and Cambridge and so on, but all that is here. That is what our ancients meant by operacy. No use of being a book-learned Panditya if you can't do practical things, if you can't be effective. Because there is a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is about doing something to time and doing well. But that may not be the best thing you are doing. Effectiveness is doing all that in a relevant fashion to solve problems and to be functional. So there is a third strand, operacy. Please remember that. Now they have gone further. There is now a fourth strand, and that is empathy. Empathy. Now you have heard of sympathy. Sympathy is where you feel sorry for somebody's plight. If somebody is in distress, you feel sympathy. It is the concept of karuna. Again there, it's all there.